Hey, good evening, everybody. This is Ken, Denise, and Sue. We are in the HCU Alumni Book Writing Focus Group on April 19th, 2024. We just warmed up with a few wins and good news. Talking about, it was a Friday noon Central, was that meeting for the drop-in work? Was it Central?
Yes.
So a couple hours at noon on Fridays. There's some folks from HCU alumni doing accountability, collaborative working in silence, like a bunch of monks working in their little work group and doing some accountability with each other and tips and tricks. Sue and Denise could talk more about that. I talked about some success with true storytelling, making progress in the Army. Good news on that. And yeah, so I guess the other one I had was I gave a hint to that one last night in the Commons area. I used our HCU alumni working group as a case study for systems thinking in a systems thinking facilitation course that I'm taking. It's a year-long program with meets once a month, 3 hours a session on Zoom with a one-on-one collaboration in between. And so I was demonstrating some skills with systems thinking facilitation, and I used our case study as an example of how systems thinking can be very useful in the formative stages of a potential work group. I classified us as well, it's not even just herding cats. It's like cats herding cats. When you're herding cats, that's a human trying to work with cats. But if the cats are trying to herd themselves, how do you do that? And I walked through an example of interest group mapping or interest mapping and purpose mapping that turned out to be really effective for that small group that I'm working with. And it feels like they actually want to try to do the same things that we're doing. And that is find out where our interests are overlapping and where our local experts can help facilitate the other folks and slowly become a voluntary community of practice. So that went really well. And I was excited about it. There, 5 out of the 6 people were also interested in writing books, and it may be in the future they'll be able to leverage some of the things that we talked about. So got that going. I was really happy to get through the certification. The one thing that really jumped out at me that I wanted to talk about tonight was the idea of using design thinking about the book that you want to write. And when I applied design thinking and systems thinking to my own book writing effort, that's what turned out to be the thing where I got out of my own way when I started thinking about the purpose of the book. What did I specifically need it to do? And then it took on a particular structure because I listed the things that I needed the book to do. And then each one of those became a part of the book, and then I could organize it in a certain way. And then the book became a collection of actionable items that I could then put into a pleasing form. So if, I was planning on talking about that a little bit if you guys find that to be of interest. What do you think?
Mm-hmm.
That sound all right?
Yeah, whatever your ideas, because like I said, so you may have to,
Yeah.
again, what you're talking about yesterday was so broad.
Yeah.
And then there were so many different parts to it. But I think if you could narrow it down into the design thinking of going into a book, as opposed to, because I said the book can turn out to be a giant lead magnet for our course, let's say. A book can be standalone to be, its own thing. It may not, but if that's it, because I've got like 4 or 5 books all here that I've started, 3 of them aren't going to make me any money. So it's whether, they'll make some and they're really good purpose, but they're not directly related to my business. I mean, they are, they're just a little off the side, still the same stuff, but not directly related, which is where now I'm looking to get a book or 2. I've got 2 different angles that could bring them in to my course, which would be directly related to building my business.
Yep.
So that's where I think that the design thinking would help me at this point, because I know what I'm doing with those others. They're just on the back shelf till I have time.
Okay. Well, I'm going to show you the charts that I used when I worked with the book writing consultant. His name is Steve Gordon, and I found him to be very helpful. His team, some of the implementing processes I wasn't as pleased with. I thought it took longer to do editing than it needed to, but I found that he helped me get over the hump because he was asking good questions about my ideas for the book and helped me sharpen my focus. So what I ended up doing was this kind of structure. Let me know when you can see that.
Right.
Okay. So I'm going to start in the middle with the book, and so what I'm talking about is book number 1. Oh, actually, let me make this a little easier to see. Let's see, view. Where's my zoom? Zoom to selection. That turns out to be the way to view. Zoom to selection. That's how you make it bigger. To fill the whole screen, because a lot of times I end up having lots of pieces and parts in a spreadsheet. What I have actually, so here's just a tip when you're making artifacts. Excel is a great visual canvas. It really is and then it has that grid in there. And so what I find, you can do mass formatting and move things around very easily on that kind of like a structured canvas, and it's very easy to type things. So anyway, I end up using it for quite a lot of just graphical design. So what I'm talking about is book number 1. And what helped me is that I realized it didn't have to be all of those books, that I had a bunch of books that I could imagine with specific purposes, but I didn't need all of those things to be done at once in book number 1. So I looked at it, book number 1 as being a very specific purpose. And what it turned out to be in many cases was a collection of tips. So we had like plan, prepare, execute, and assess. So we call this the our 4-phase operations process when we're going through our planning into action and then trying to learn from what we did in the military. This actually turns out to be a great way to organize business operations, or specifically trading operations, that you can you work on the plan, and the plan just has to be good enough to survive contact in the world and get you moving. And that the real success for us comes in the prepare phase, in which we're organizing resources, doing rehearsals, making necessary movements, and going through the contingencies and what we're going to do if things go to the left or to the right. What are we going to do when the world starts adapting to what we did? So the preparation simply says, look, I could be planning on going from here to there, but my target might move over to here or over to here. If I have good preparation, then I'm ready to deviate and go in the direction I need, and all have that within the confines of one robust, not overly detailed plan. So for us, the details goes into preparation so I can be ready for anything. Because at some point, you can't plan for every specific contingency. You have to look at tendencies and probabilities and trust yourself to be able to react in time. Well, then once preparation is done, we're ready to begin movement towards whatever it is we're doing. And then we concentrate on execution. And that is, how can I be well trained to execute routine things routinely without having to think through it each and every time? So if I can build up a basis of standard work, call them battle drills, where I have standard work for specific environments, then I can pick from those and implement them as needed as soon as I get the trigger. Oh, this happened, so I just use that battle drill, so forth. So if I'm well trained on battle drills and I've prepared well with resources and rehearsals, then my plan can be a general approach to how I want to proceed and give me the flexibility to be adaptable along the way. Then if I survive contact on the objective and somehow we don't lose, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through an assessment phase. And when I assess, I'm actually going to assess how well did I plan? Did I plan according to my standard work for planning? Did I consider all the right things and produce a good order and all that jazz? And then I can assess how well did I prepare with resources and rehearsals and that kind of thing. And then how well did I execute? Did I choose the right battle drill? Was I trained on it? Did I perform it correctly? And then I can actually assess my own assessment and say, have I really gone through each of those phases systematically? Have I developed the insights and the lessons learned and used that as part of my continuous improvement program? If I'm assessing, but I don't have that connected to specific actions to get better, then I haven't really assessed to the highest level. So it turns out that plan, prepare, execute, and assess are really excellent. So in our trading book, in our trading practice, we have a handful, let's call them a dozen, specific one-liners or good things to do that are always excellent. And so we prepared, I think we used 13 just because that was the guidance we got from our coach. So we had 4 sections of 13. So we ended up having 52 tips. And each tip was like, you should do this thing because it will lead to that result. Speaking in a direct action with the voice of experience and necking it down into like one thesis statement that if someone asked, we would then go through an argument with reasons and evidence and case study examples and all that. But it would always kind of come back to a simple one-line statement of fact that leads to successful action, and that becomes a tip.
Right.
I actually
So
learned.
can I bump in here?
Sure.
So for that collection of tips, that's all now stuck under tip number 1 that ends up with 52 tips in it.
Yeah.
Are you producing that in one tips package ebook, or are you breaking out plan, prepare, are you breaking out all those 4, having 4 separate tips?
Yeah, you can actually do all of them, because once you've assembled them into tip book 1, and if you have 4 sections and there's 13, what you really have is you have an information campaign of 52 weekly.
So you could do 52 of those short clips.
Yeah.
Of 2 minutes each that lead to the ebook that's let's say by the plan with the 13 tips in it, which leads to the either they can collect all 4 of those, or they can just jump right into book 1 that has it all.
Yeah, because I could call tip book number 1 with 52 tips. I could make tip 1 the title, the reason why, the example, the process, a training aid, testimonial, and I could actually lead that into a coaching session. And now what I actually have is the build out of an entire lesson, which could be a 90-minute lesson, right? Because if you're an expert on your stuff, that little concise statement of a tip is really just your title. And it could lead as far up the ladder of Bloom's taxonomy as they want to go. Are they going to do hands-on work in their own applied area with some guidance and supervision and counseling and coaching? Well, that's a much more involved. And so the top level list of 52 tips can support a weekly blog posting, so you're constantly dripping new content with a discussion. You could take the written flashcard plus a 3 to 5 minute elevator speech, or even a 1 minute speech, and now you have a very nice YouTube short.
Right.
Or you could have a 3 to 5 minute speech, an elevator speech that intrigues somebody to, hey, let me go listen to your free 30-minute workshop on that tip, where you do a little Q&A and you talk them through it. You could actually, if you were converting this into a course, you might have 4 modules with 13 subsections. That might be enough that you had 4 courses. You could make those maybe individual. Here's how to plan better. Or you could even go laterally and say, look, I've got these 4 modules, and I'm just going to give you the introductory piece for a little bit of planning, a little prep, a little execution, and a little assessment. And then if you want to go deeper on that, on any one of the modules, I can give you a course of 13 lessons and 15 hours. And then if you want that to be a coaching, so this thing ends up being able to expand in many directions. You could go very deep on a course. You could do a horizontal slice. That might get people to buy the entire package, which you could do at a discount. So it turns out that
So if you publish that one tips one, let me just go back to that the way you got it, because like I said, I understand. Yeah, we can do all kinds of stuff, marketing, leading back, going backwards and now coming forward.
Yeah.
But on that one, would you just do the 52 tips and leave it at that?
You
With
could.
just more of an introduction and
Yeah.
and like a description of what plan is, and here's the tips, what prepare
Yeah.
is. And so
That's
it's
right.
a very, okay. So yeah,
You could make, if you said each tip, the written piece was going to be 1 page, you could actually make that a 52-page book with just 1 page per the book, and a couple pages on the front and the back with some ideas for background, and then some application and that kind of stuff. So call it 60 pages with just the strict tip. Well, so I wanted to do more than that on book number 1, but it turns out that when I went through the process of assembling the 52 tips and organizing it around our top level process, plan, prepare, execute, and assess, it turned out that what I wanted to do for the book was to introduce people to some of those tips in each area. Some of those tips in each area. So I wanted to take a sample of those. I essentially wrote book number 1 that included a sample of each of those 4 dimensions. So I had a section in this book where if this was the packing list for the whole book, and I included my background and how our community of practice developed and what our purposes were in life, and in general how we trade, there was a section in there just on a sampling of tips. And I think I did like 2 out of each section. So we gave them about 8 pages of tips to plan, to prepare, to execute, to assess. And we said, hey, that's a sample that'll do you no harm. And if you want, we can provide you the consolidated tips book of 60 pages. We can also build that
so
out
that one could be your
into
lead magnet,
course.
the one that you just do in red. would be
Yeah.
a lead magnet around to the tips book then, kind of.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that
I
was
think,
more of an introduction to everything.
yeah, I think so. What I actually looked at each of the individual tips that I produce. If I take a tip, like a 1-page slide, and I do a 1-minute speech on it, I don't know if that's a lead magnet or not, but I think it is. I put that on YouTube, and
Mhm.
I make a blog post out of it with the text, and then I also embed on the blog post a link to the video on YouTube so they can see that there. And then when they go to YouTube to look at that link and listen to the tip, they see my channel and they can sign up for the channel. And the channel has all 52 tips kind of linked in there, plus all the other videos that I have on trading. So it kind of, if they run across the written tip or the audio, it kind of gets them into the ecosystem and they can start evaluating all of the different things that I do. Now, I suppose, a person who wanted to get all my stuff without paying for it, they could go to YouTube individually and download individual lessons and put them into, and so be it. You can get around that a little bit by saying, look, on my YouTube channel, I can have this set up here in the public out there acting as marketing tools for me
Right.
24/7. And then I could have some that are in the unlisted area. So you have to know, the specific link. You can even password protect them, but I usually don't bother because I forget the password. So I usually just make it unlisted for maybe 2/3 or 3/4 of it. I probably give away a quarter and keep 3/4 behind the knowledge wall or whatever. Um, so this effort on assembling the tips and getting it very tightly structured with the sentence of what you do and then why you do it, or how. It's either a why you did it or how you did it, which is the payoff, and then that leads just naturally all the way out to a process where you're coaching them through an example of their work. And at the more advanced level, you're actually helping them apply that tip to their specific circumstances. And that's a premium coaching package right there, because I have to listen to you one-on-one as you tell me the background and I can figure out how this thing fits in your circumstances. So I have to kind of do that one-on-one, unless I can do a small group coaching where 3 or 4 people with the same circumstances want to get together. But the more basic form of coaching might be, hey, maybe I have a standard case, a standard case study that shows how to apply this in a common experience in the world. And then I can actually coach a lot of people going through a standard story problem. You could have 20 or 30 people working in small groups, and you could teach them the lesson, go through all the dimensions of it, give them a circumstance and ask them to come up with a solution. And if you might have 4 groups all working on the common case study and they talk about their 4 solutions and then you comment on it. So I would call that coaching 101, because you can get 20 or 30 people in there. But if you were going to do personalized coaching and you say, hey, I have this thorny problem personally, how would I do this in my own life? That's where I would charge a premium for personalized one-on-one coaching. As
Yeah.
an example, if I were to do that, I give them 10 sessions at $5,000, and the sessions never wear out. And when they're ready for that coaching, they just sign up on my calendar and I give them an hour. And that hour actually reflects about 5 hours of effort because they've sent me background material. They come in prepared. We talk about it. We have some follow up, but I count that as sort of like a 1 hour of live coaching, which I record and save into their personal private coaching file so they can refer to it later. And then I usually ask them, hey, if there's something smart I said in there, could I extract a piece to use as marketing? And they say yes. So, so the point is that the tip is nice because it could be, like I said, a one-line entry for a blog. It could be on your business card. It could be a 3 to 5 minute elevator speech. It can go all the way out to a very detailed coaching. So when I was thinking about book one, I wanted it to be more than just tips. Because in our world, if we think of the iceberg model from systems thinking, there's some foundational material on beliefs and psychology and how the market works that actually has some detail and theory. When you understand that stuff, it bubbles up into the world and you see, here's a tip that this signal happens and you do that thing and it's going to work. And lo and behold, it works. Well, why did it work? Well, it turns out that because it's connected at some deep level to details and theory, which doesn't fit into a single sentence. You actually got to, suffer through that. If you do the tips right, a person actually doesn't have to go drill all the way down into the deep theory in order to apply the tip. A good tip gives them a procedure that they can follow simply, and it pays off. You get enough of those and they are going to say, hey, tell me more about this stuff. So what I wanted to do was essentially use a sampling of tips across the broad perspective of plan, prepare, execute, and assess in order to show them that we actually had a lot of material in the foundations that would reward their study for a lifetime of trading if they wanted to go to that depth. But they didn't have to. There were some things that we could, if you just got the tips and put it into practice, it was going to improve your trading. Thank you very much. And then now you let them decide how deep you want to go. Well, there's some intermediate stuff where I'm starting to think about systems, a standalone package that takes you through plan, prepare, execute, and assess on how to trade a specific instrument in a certain time frame in a certain way as a nice package of behaviors. It's kind of adaptable and lets you react. It's more than a tip, but it's less than the encyclopedia of knowledge. I think of it as actually a system is really the minimum mission essential information to survive. So here's how you find a target. Here's how you prepare the trade. Here's what you look for to get into it. Here's how you manage your risk. Here's how you get out of the trade. And here's how you assess it. Done. When I can fill in all of those blanks, they have a soup to nuts explanation of one facet of trading as a standalone system. That turns out to be an intermediate level of teaching, and that now becomes the things that I want to teach them in books 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Each one of those is going to go into the middle space and talk about more than tips, but less than the full foundational theory. Making sense?
Right. Okay, so that book one, you've got it going over to 15 chapters. I don't know if that's like set in stone, but you just did that. But if you took your 4 areas, let's say you got 3, you end up with 12. I'm just saying, you know, if those if there was 3 chapters for each one, you know, so then how big, if you've got 52 tips in one, you got 60 pages there, what are you looking at that the whole book ends up being once you explain all those tips and put them into chapters?
So let's say I'm going to call tips 1 an actual book.
Yeah.
That's the complete one. That turns out to be about 60 pages of a standalone ebook.
Right.
But where I can also use the individual pages or the chapters for whatever purpose I need.
Right.
And I'm going to say that I introduce plan, prepare, execute, and assess. I think it was around chapter 4. Because I talked about, this was sort of the background, chapter 1, and purpose. This was our history. This was our community of practice and what we try to be like when we're together so that we behave according to the rules of the tribe. That was sort of the introduction to who we are. Chapter 4 was the plan, prepare, execute, and assess, that top level process. And in that, I included 2 tips. So chapter 4 turned out to be about 10 pages because I had 8 tips plus a page and a half or 2 about the process and the examples and some of that jazz. But that was a nice, 10-page chapter. And so our background was about 10 pages. Our history was 10 pages. The community of practice was about 10 pages. Now, some of these other chapters were a little longer because book 1 ended up becoming about 300 pages, of which 10 of them came from this book.
Yeah.
Right. So,
because like you said, in book 2,
yeah.
then you'll bring in some more of those tips because they're
Right.
Yeah. So you could just use this almost the same format going through.
Exactly. So what I did was I thought of book 1 as the foundations piece.
Yeah.
So this is book 1. And then on top of that, I was going to put, I put book 2, which was very detailed. This was like an operator's manual that includes, we have a working dictionary with definitions, systems descriptions, how we use technical indicators. This was like a mechanic's a toolkit and an instruction manual, very, very detailed. Then books like 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 were systems implementations of how to trade from start to finish using the foundational theory plus the tools in the toolkit. So 3 through 7 are going to be, I'm still writing them, but 3 through 7 are going to be very specific systems that stand alone that are part of that. When I think of this as courses, book number 1 is a course. I can teach that. Book number 2 is actually like just a tech reference manual. You can't really teach the encyclopedia, but you can make it available for reference. So book number 2 is a reference. And then 3 through 7 are this middle ground of the systems. And then 8, 9, and 10 were how to personalize at the top level individual adaptation. So what I did there was I took chapters 13, 14, and 15, I think it was. I took 3, and I have assistant instructor A, B, and C. These are 3 guys that are my students.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and I certified them on their system, and they took my system and made it a personal version of it. And then I certified them on how to teach and coach. And I helped them design a course in our Rizuku program. So that was their 20 pages to introduce themselves and what they do and what they offer. And that was important because I was able to show these are living examples that our stuff works. I taught these guys and they didn't know anything. Now they're not only trading for a living, but they're also teaching it, and they can coach you in your process, and they are strongly connected to our baseline material and our basic systems. But they show that you can actually do this yourself. So like in chapter 12, we said meet 10 traders. And these became guys who were 10 different traders in different walks of life. Some of them are full-time professionals, traders. Some of them are professionals who trade in the evening or on the weekend or whatever as a supplement to what it is that they do. So they're still trading professionally, but not exclusively as a source of income. Some of the guys are managing family estates and their trading accounts or whatever. So chapter 12 was designed to say, look, if you're reading the foundations book, jump ahead to chapter 12 and you can see 10 different people from a wide variety of backgrounds that are trading in a particular way. One of those is probably going to resonate with you. And so that we have a solution for you somewhere in our curriculum. So that was chapter 12. And then so if chapter 4 was the plan, prepare, execute, and assess, chapter 5 was some psychology, 6 through 11 was an introduction to systems, where we gave just enough information to show how we do it and what it is like. Not a complete system description and everything, but enough information that it would help them improve their own performance and do things like that. So it turns out that once I went through the purpose of that, I wanted to include those last chapters, chapter 12 for marketing, chapters 13 and 14 and 15, to get these younger fellas into their own business that I could help market with my name and outreach, and then help them grow their business. And then we have a referral thing. I host their courses. They keep 80%. I keep 20%. I give them new material. I show up as a guest lecturer sometimes. So they're actually able to leverage my skill and position in order to grow their own business. And they have a financial incentive to do really well. So I've got 3 of those guys at the production level now working for me, and a couple other guys we just brought in that are going to do the same thing. So now at some point I see myself in the base camp, and these guys are external manifestations of what we're doing. And I can teach people in my ways, but I can also steer new students towards the guy who's trading in a certain way that probably resonates with them. And then my time is not spread out between like boot camp and basic fitness. I can concentrate on the higher end, developing new material, doing strategic planning, doing the higher payoff one-on-one coaching.
Yeah.
And doing all that stuff. So once I sort of saw that as the ecosystem, then I was able to turn book 1 and its 15 chapters into a very structured outline. And then the idea was that book number 1 could become a home study course on foundations. And then I use a good, better, best approach. The good version is you get the recording, call that 15 modules and 15 lessons with an hour-long presentation. That's what we ended up doing. And you can listen to the recordings of that, and that's good. I actually had, when I first did it, I had an FAQ session.
15 hours?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I turned each one of those chapters into an hour-long reading, and in the course that I put together for that, I actually gave them the audio book where I read each damn chapter, and that was painful. Oh my goodness, painful. But what are you going to do? And then I did a 1-hour summary with a Q&A session on each little chapter. And so we had a Zoom session, and I had anywhere from 5 to 100 people in there who had sent me questions about that chapter. And I had that list, and I went through an hour, and I used a 1-page flashcard that summarized all the material of each chapter. And I used that as a way to answer the questions that they had. And that recording becomes part of the home study course that is a good version. So it has 15 modules and about 15 hours, and it has the set of all 15 note cards, and I give him the audio book files, and I can sell that for $97.
So the
It's like,
first time you did it, it was live,
yeah,
obviously.
right. So
Yeah.
I took the first one, and that was really a pilot. And I said, hey, I'm going to give you guys this for
Yeah.
$100. I'm going to give this to you for $100 because you're going to get to ask me your personal questions, and I'm going to answer your questions personally. And then guys in the future that pay $97 only get to listen to your questions. If they want to ask questions, they have to buy the better version. I'm also going to do a weekly course on one-on-one application coaching. They got to pay $19.97 for the best version, which is personalized implementation. That actually can lead to other coaching opportunities. So there's a certain scale, which is really based on how much time I got to put into it. Because I'm 67, I don't have all day. Well, I have other slightly less expensive versions of this. I tell them, look, the three guys that I had that were part of that, you can take their courses and get coaching with them for less than working with me, and they'll do you good. And then all we do is we have a reciprocal relationship that if they take my students course, it comes with they spend, 500 bucks on it or $1,000, whatever they want to price it at. We give them anywhere from a $200 to a $500 coupon for money off of my version. So if they get my guys and they like that, but they want more, now it's a little cheaper to take the second version with me and go deeper. And so we try to help them find the level of pain, because learning is painful. Find the level that you want, and we don't try to gouge them by saying, well, if you decide to keep walking up the steps, it'll be we respect the fact that you've already spent money down in here, so we're not going to charge you the same price for someone that came straight in.
Right, yeah.
And that's actually a good deal, because now their start point is at a higher level, and there's a lot less spinning of wheels, where you're saying, oh, he's coming in at this higher level, but he neglected all the foundational pieces. So there's a thought process that, as they crawl up the ladder, it's a little bit easier. Well, so now the idea was this good, better, best is that as I write these other books now, it turns out that chapter 4 on psychology is going to lead to a full book on the psychology of trading, because that's about 100 to 200 pages worth of deep dive into psychology. So in that one, we would give them some theory, some practice, some practical exercises that they could do, and we could coach and assess them on. And we put them in a lot of different positions that they could expect that have psychological impact on their long-term trading. That takes a whole book. And that leads to home study course number 4, and then home study course and live and in-person coursework. And that could lead to individual coaching. And so I've got a couple other guys that do nothing but psychological coaching. This guy, he's a musician that became a full-time trader, and he's really good at helping people that are making life transitions. And then one of the gals is a certified hypnotherapist in England, so she can do that. So I actually have some other people that I can offload people to do onto them for coaching in their specialties. And that allows people to, hey, I just need the book. No, I want the book and the recorded questions. No, I need the book, the recorded home study, plus I want to do some live weekly Q&As. No, I actually want to take a full course with coaching and all that. So now the book number 1 and the 15 chapters each chapter had a specific purpose. And each chapter then is a 10 to 20 page placeholder for something that could become its own standalone book as part of our, library of materials. Because the books like 5 through 8 or whatever it was, those might be the workbooks that go much deeper into each of the systems. We talked about individual systems in 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, something like that. And then each one of those could be a 10-page system description and then a 100-page workbook with examples of, worked examples of trades, and then trade setups that don't have the solutions that they then work on and submit, and then they can download the solution. All of that is automated. And then if they want to talk about their solution, now they're coming into they want to talk about that live with the hands-on. Now it moves them up the ladder of success in there.
Okay, so where I'm coming from is I've got my 30 tips.
Yeah.
Which it'll be somewhere between the tip and then the book. But I'm not going to go the book. I'm going to have to figure out whether it's just a tips book that leads then to my pilot, or if it's more like a book and I just use the tips as my lead magnet into book 1, which is all 30 tips. And I've got the same thing. It's like 2 pages, describe it's the tip and then like some reflection questions. So like almost like that, how to implement, the tip.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's just going to go to the course. Now, on the other hand, I've got my big book that's already written with 11 chapters in it, almost like this one, that I was thinking about chunking it out and making an ebook out of each one of my chapters.
Kind of
the
like
ones that are the best
backwards.
That again, I'll drill them back over, but there's so many tips in those. I could almost have like a whole series of tips that would then lead to. So I'm thinking maybe, I don't know, my tips just may be my lead magnets that go to a book that's maybe, 40 pages or something like that.
I was thinking, so this would be the full tip book. And that one probably, if you start thinking about like from 47 to 97 or $197, you decide what that full lead magnet. What are your thoughts on pricing on a lead magnet? Like 0?
My lead magnets were going to be free.
Okay.
Yeah, just as in like maybe I'll break down, I'll break it down, but I've got 3 sections, so I could have a small ebook of 10 because the way they do. So I've got like you had your 4 steps. I've got 3 sections. So they could have 10 of it each, and those wouldn't be much, but $4.95, something like that. For the tips book. So I'd end up with 3 tips books. Of the 10 each, so they wouldn't be that huge unless I put them all in one book. That's where I've got to. But my lead magnets, like I said, could just be the tips, but you need the book to explain the tips and get the worksheets with it, basically, is what I'm kind of thinking.
That makes sense to me. So you have 3 sections of tips with 10 tips in each one, let's say. And then if some or all of that is free, then you say that the next level, and this is where they start actually paying. Now, the next level up is the tip plus the worksheet.
And more description, like you said, you got to describe the tip and how to use it.
Example, So these are the live, this is the live case studies, and it probably has some audio explanations from you that so they get used to your style. You record what it is that you want to, the director's cut. This gives you the apply and the director's cut with new information. And then that could lead to your, to the full book, the big book you already have, which supports your big course.
No, it doesn't.
Oh, okay.
That's the part it's mine. It's what I've already written that has 300 pages. It's a good look. It would need to be reworked better. So that's what I was saying. Yes, I will always use that as a lead gen, but it's $50 on Amazon. So if I break down the chapters that they could buy in cheaper per chapter at $9.95, I'll make more money.
Yeah, this is how I am thinking about that. I think of that foundations book, the book one that I just described, that 300 pages, that got all that crap out of my head to do all the foundational and the background and the theory and to establish my credentials.
Yeah.
So I never have to worry about that again. And then it turns out that some people want the book, and then that leads them to the tips, tip book, home study course, small courses, big courses, and coaching, right? And so that became, I didn't actually try to, I'm not going to process that too much, but what I would do, if you've already got that, it seems to me that if you just started with that itemized list of tips and then added a section of application worksheets and reflection questions and worked examples and a little audio, now that grows. And then you might build a specific course where they have, live Q&A with you or leads to coaching, but without necessarily trying to make that about the book. The big book is just, you can actually use that as a detailed reference book in support of any and all the coursework that you're doing.
Yeah,
it's
a good resource book. I would call it that, kind of like you did your book one, Foundations.
Yeah. What I had to do was, in order to keep it under 1,000 pages or whatever, I had to decide, I had to make a specific decision to split out all of the technical reference material into book two. So book one was big picture. Book two was like the book of forms and definitions and details and, under
right.
the
Yeah.
hood.
You were describing. Yeah. I wrote that down. Yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds to me like your big book probably has both of those. It has both probably theory and practice, and as a nice reference.
Yeah. It's got a lot of that.
So I wouldn't monkey around with that at all. But this sort of the practical application of going from introduction to the material with your lead magnet, that's what I think the tips do. And you might have 3 different lead magnets and see which one of those, like, I would ask you.
Well, since there's 3 sections.
Yeah.
I'll do one of each of those. But then my tips, I'll do for all 30, I'll do a short.
You could have one big ebook of all 30 tips by themselves. And then I would call that the tips plus book would be one where you say, I'm giving you the 30 tips, plus I'm going to give you these other ones with worksheets and reflection questions and some commentary. So I think of that as a tips plus.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people would buy the tips book for $19 or something. I'm making up numbers, but they might buy the complete workbook with detailed instructions that gives them the apply phase. The tips books allow them to comprehend the workbook. Think of it as the workbook gets them to the apply level. Everything after the apply level is when we get into Bloom and we start thinking about analyze. We say, look, how do I take a complex situation and break out the little chunks and pieces and then pick the right tip for each of the little pieces that are of interest? There's either a problem or an opportunity that I can break out and then use the applied tip to help me improve that part of my overall system. So that's one where I think you're going beyond just lecture. You're really asking them to look through the magnifying glass and analyze it complexity into component parts and then start solving the pieces. And that takes a little more hand holding and is more advanced. Whereas if you
Right.
have
And
a,
what I'm going to do because I have to market the parents for them to put their child in my course.
Yeah.
The tips is for the parents.
Yeah.
For them to be able to do some support of their child that's in a highly competitive sport to support them. And then at the end of that will be, hey, I can, this is great. You're gonna be able to help your child at home, but they really need help in the whole big picture. Let's sign up your child into my program so we can really tackle this where it is. But here's some good tips for you guys to do at home.
Yeah. Because what you're giving them is the top of the, the principles at the tip of the iceberg. And that's what persuades them to give their kids to you. And then they know that you and the kids are going to go as deep as needed. The tips is what tells them, this is substantial and justified and quality. So I don't have to go in there and become a master of all that stuff. The coach is going to teach them how to grip the bar or do whatever. But I need the tips to help me see at the top level the big payoffs, the big vision of what's going on, and the principles that are going to guide in each of the sessions, and the way we're going to empower the kids to become, self-actualized and all that.
Right. And a lot of it, since you're coaching the soccer team. So the tips, I've got basically 10 tips for pre-competition, 10 tips for after competition, and 10 like general, tips for year round. It's like, you got to help, boost them up, but don't don't put too much pressure on them and all that kind of stuff that goes into it. And if they're crying on the way home, how do you deal with it? What should you say? What should you do? And I know, like you said, you've got stuff that you tell the kids also. So I was going to do that. I mean, I could do tips books for the kids too, but it's the parents are buying. So this HCU just says, don't worry about the kids right now. Get the,
exactly.
Yeah.
It's like,
Get the parents, bring the,
because when I'm in the circle
the parents
with the kid, when I'm in the circle with the kids, example, I say, what do I want every day? And they say respect. And I say, how do I know you respect me? And they say, because we listen. And then, how do I know you're listening? It's because they look in my eyes and they're quiet when I'm talking. And then I reverse and say, what do I give you? Respect. How do you know I respect you, kids? Because you listen to his coach and that kind of stuff. So that little speech, that little battle drill, that process that I do at the start and at the end of every session is a tip that I give to the parents. And I say, listen, if you give me your kids, this is what we talk about in the circle at the start and the end, because I want the session to start and end with respect and listening and mutual responsibility for how we're going to behave. I'm going to give them all sorts of soccer skills, and we're going to learn how to kick a ball and all that. But what governs that whole process, this top level umbrella that protects them from the harsh evil of the world, is going to be this little narrative, these slogans that are going to help us do things. In the same way that when we're going to play the game, we're going to protect our goal. We're going to get the ball. We're going to go to goal. We're going to shoot and score. And then they say, it's a simple game, really, coach. It's a simple game. And it turns out those are the four things. One of those four things is what you should always be doing. So I actually give that as a tip to the parents. And I say, that's what I'm teaching your kids to do, is to learn how to recognize what's going on and have a plan for what to do. So when you're giving your loud encouragement to the kids, please use that language. Don't give them other things to do like you're coaching them, because now they're confused. Well, my dad's telling me this, but the coach is telling me that. So I said,
Oh, yeah.
here's a tip, is that our partnership in the game is that if you guys use this language when you're talking about the game, that will reinforce to the kids what it is we're trying to teach them, and it brings us all onto the same team. And now we're speaking with one voice. So they don't need to know how to protect the goal. That's my job, is to teach them what to do. But that top level tip is something that is helpful to the parents, and that could be its own tip. That tip could get built out into, now if I were going to teach a course to coaches, I would say, okay, let's talk about tip number 1, protect the goal. How can we do that? Here's some words, here's some language that you teach the kids. Here's 4 drills that will help them develop the individual and then the team defensive skills that we need. And then finally, how to transition to the offense. So we start without the ball, we get into position, we close the distance, we win the ball, we protect it, and now we start moving to safety. So that could end up becoming a full lesson in a course. It could even be a workbook with pictures of the drill and an explanation. And if I was really making it a soccer course, I would get my little team out there and I would show a filmed version of us running that in practice and getting all that stuff done. I'm not going to do that, but if I was going to do that, that's how it would go, from the concept of the tip all the way out into a full lesson. And then I would say, look, I'm going to run a summer camp for a week or for 2 months, and this is our curriculum. These are the things we're going to do. And now I can run that camp. And now at some point, I teach my older players how to do that as an assistant coach.
Yeah.
So now I can have each of my older players teach the younger players. That forces the older players to actually learn what it is we're doing. But it also gives them some leadership experience and citizenship credit hours for use on their applications for scholarships and for college.
Yeah.
With a letter of recommendation signed by Coach Professor Dr. Lieutenant Colonel Ken Law, which doesn't hurt him.
Yeah.
So I guess we're about an hour in, and so what I would say is this is sort of an architectural design of, when I figured out what the purpose of that book was, actually purposes, I was then able to distinguish between these kinds of chunks, what I cover in a chapter, how that chapter is really a seed. It's 10 to 20 pages that can be built out into a full book. And then each one of those books can become their own individual home study course if that's what the people want. And again, the first time I do it live and then record it, and then that just becomes the home study course. And then if they want to ask their own live questions, they pay a little more to get the hands-on and live. And then if they want to do more for personalized instruction, I just figure out how to do coaching. What I'm doing on that is I'm doing small group coaching where I have between 4 and 6 with me in the middle, and then they form a cohort and meet weekly. And then I have a premium one where I just do one-on-one, and I charge them $5,000 for that for 10 sessions. And then when they have like a little coupon book, and they can use that whenever they want, so that they're not under hurry. They're kind of under a time pressure on this one because we meet every week, and those are the guys that need the social support network and the regularity of weekly meetings. And hey, I got to show what I did this week. So that actually helps them power through the tough times. And each one is doing their own work. And that work that they're doing individually actually helps the other guys with creativity. Because I'm working on stuff over here, but what you did over there, that's something I could even use. So the small group coaching actually helps because they get to see the other people's works. And it helps me because they're producing a lot of my content. I don't have to, I can respond to their work in progress, which is, it's not a lazy man's work, but it allows me to get the best of both worlds. So I charge like 2,500 and I'm undercharging 2,500 for 52 weeks of 1 hour a week, which is, I should probably do that in quarters. But I'm sort of, I like to give them value. Their end product of that after a year, guys that stick with it for a full year, they end up coming up with a system that actually allows me to determine if they're going to be one of my new assistant teachers. And what they come up with at the end of the year becomes their approved system. And then I teach them how to write a chapter, how to write a book, how to make a home study course. So that actually starts growing the program through practical application. They become a teaching assistant, and then off they go. And then I have enough infrastructure that I've paid for with lifetime memberships that it, makes their startup cost zero. They only have to do sweat equity to get on board with that approach. So I'm about 18 months into that, where I used to do all of this myself as the Lone Ranger. Now I got a team of 4 guys that are really active doing this. And the 4 or 5 of us wrote that book together. I wrote everything from like 1 to 11 or something like that. Then each one of them had one chapter. And that worked out really good because then we could show people in the Foundations book, hey, take a look at what the end of the tunnel looks like when you come out of this tunnel. And so that was the purpose and the goal of those chapters became an important part of how we designed this thing. So the structure of that book had a very particular, and then everything that I wanted to put in here but didn't fit that structure ended up becoming its own separate book in planning. And then when I go through, let's see where it is here. So we actually did this was part of what goes into those systems and detail books. Was we have stuff for day trading, swing trading, and core trading. Every one of those is its own system or strategy. And each one of those needs 10 pages. So that I couldn't do all of the foundational material and then the encyclopedic level of detail and all those. So that's what was stopping me before, was I couldn't see how the collection of books would fit together. And then I use this one when I'm talking with the guys. I say, look, these are the courses that I reserve to teach. I have one on basic psychology, foundations, core, swing and day trading, advanced trading, and I teach that storytelling, creativity. I just say, look, those are going to be the things that I teach, guys. And you guys and Abel Wade Tech and Bill Scheit and Jeff Boccaccio, you guys are going to start developing your own courses that build out of the basic material that I have. This is my brother's stuff. And we're actually going to do not just trading, but we're going to do healthcare and creativity for healthcare leaders because he's in that profession. So it turns out that same principle works exactly the same. Like the psychology that we use for trading is the same psychology that's going to help him over here with healthcare.
Yeah.
So this structure is going to work really nicely for him in that area. And then let's see if this workflow page briefs. Well, the other one was really my I think you may have seen that before, was my business plan for how I'm trying to use the different, email marketing, podcasts, blog posts, relationship marketing. I'm just monkeying around with all that stuff to try to get it moving. But the book turns out to be really a high payoff. Okay, so that was the workflow, systems mapping. Yeah, I think book structure. Yeah, so this turned out to be the plan for the 10 books. So book one was that foundational trading, book two is the indicators, and then I'm going to do one where it's the individual tracks their own performance through there's about 75 skills they got to have. And so I'm going to be the lead author on those. And on the indicators, I'm having these guys produce parts of it that are related to their teaching. But then when we get down into books 4 through beyond, the lead author is going to change and they're going to write their own books. So this is how I'm keeping track of our overall distributed writing program, if I can say it that way. And that's the management plan for that. I don't, you're probably not interested in going that far. You got enough on your plate to get going, but
Yeah.
what I needed
like
to
I
do
said,
is, I'm 67. I'd like my son and my younger brother to be able to run this when I fully retire. And I want to keep that thing going because these other guys that are working on their systems are in their 40s and they want to do this for another 30 years. Well, that's fine. We're gonna turn this into a little production line. So I'm planning for transition and handoff to those guys.
yeah, and I'm about the same. I'm 66, so it's
Yeah.
and I'm a one man show, so it's
Yeah, it gets
I'm
it's a level of effort.
doing this. That's why I'm going for group coaching first with once a week Q&A, and I'll add on a few upsells for one-on-one, but that'll be laser coaching. But I will not be presenting any of this live. They still, even if they get laser coaching, they're going through the full group coaching program. Just like you said, they got to go through all the foundations. They've got to, watch all the videos. They got to do all the work. And then I'll supplement on 2 levels higher than that. But that's it.
Yeah, and the honest messaging, the honest messaging you give your clients is, look, I would have to charge you way more money to give you this recorded lesson live. And honestly, I'm going to say the same thing because I did a really good job recording it because I said exactly what I wanted and I cut out all the extra crap. So you're getting a condensed, direct, pure version of this. And I can give that to you at a much less cost than for you buying my time live. So,
right. And also, these kids have no time. So I can't do that. It will not work. There's a lot of sports psychologists that do that. And I don't see, at least in my sport, I don't know. They don't have time. They work out 20 to 30 hours a week on top of their schoolwork. And somehow they got to find time to eat and sleep,
I'm with you on that. Well, that's what I wanted to say about the, design thinking for the book as sort of a structured approach to what, where the book is in the language of systems thinking. The book is a very structured way to organize your material. So this is what I did with the systems thinking people. I said, look, these were the gals and other people that are in my course. I just said, look, what I see us doing in our little HCU alumni is that we've identified at least all of these areas of interest so far.
Yeah.
Right. And so if I put Sue in here, I would say what we discovered is that there's another one where I'd be willing to facilitate. It turned out that the people that I was working with, they didn't like the idea of leadership. They thought, oh, that sounds so harsh. You know, I'm 45 years of Army service, lead follower, get out of the way. But we said, okay, oh, yeah, no, facilitating where you're organizing, but you're not directing, you know. I get that. And so what I'm thinking about as a leader would be I'm expert enough that I could actually teach the course on one of these. Like if I was better at the mechanics of book writing, I would say, oh, I could lead a small group that was interested in book writing. So when we do sort of an interest inventory, we might go through who wants to learn about email marketing and whatever. And so you go through all that stuff. And then how are you going to use the material that we're doing? Are you going to be an independent consultant, a team leader at work where you want to improve your systems thinking skills at work? That was really geared for them because we're studying systems thinking, not trading or
Right.
HCU. No, I just want to be a good team member and have systems thinking skills so I can just be a better worker for the team. Or no, I just am looking at adding personal skills so that so that everything I do in the future, I'm going to have a little more capabilities when I need it. And so everybody kind of went through this and filled out their purpose. And then we went back through this and said some people like Ken T is a independent consultant and a coach, and he can teach how to do that. So he said, yeah, I'd be willing to be a leader on that. I said, well, I'd be willing to be a leader on practical AI. So we did that little interest mapping. And then after that process, we had a little conceptual diagram here where we said, look, all our individual people had a certain amount of knowledge, and you can see how this fits the HCU alumni. Everybody has their own
Right.
knowledge and skills, has specific capabilities they could deliver, but also interest and goals that they want to learn. So it may be that Sue has a capability that meets my interest that I want to learn. So we have a natural partnership. But if a lot of people had that interest in your capability, now suddenly we might have a 4-person breakout group. We might say, hey, let's make that a high priority breakout group on something or other. And maybe there's these other things that have interests, but we don't have a clear facilitator or leader yet. That's just waiting to be done. So I see us doing like book writing, design thinking, and probably we talked a little bit about video editing. So these are the sort of the high priority action at the center of what we're doing. And then these are other things that are waiting for the right time to come into the oven to work, you know. And then I showed them how saw our work unfolding, which was I see our work as the Thursday night being the commons. And then Friday, you know, we're doing a book writing and what was the like systems thinking or
Systems
design
thinking,
thinking.
yeah.
Yeah. And those are the live ones. So I think we're going to end up planning to do email marketing and artifact production and video editing. Like I was going to probably record an example of me editing a video to pull out a 1 minute artifact. And then right now, I think we're working through what do we do in this book writing session? Well, I think what we just did looks kind of like a standard piece of work as background. And then I think what we do in the future is that people come in and say, now that I have the first thing I got to do is design my book. And then I got to start developing the pieces. And then performance might be where I'm in the actual production and final editing. And then my book is complete. Well, that little process of going from design, develop, perform, and completion is lean production and the Kanban style of minimizing work in process so that I'm not trying to do all of these things that I'm planning to do. I pick the highest priority and then work them deliberately and expeditiously through to completion. And then I make an archive of that work. So if other people come later that want to do that, they can follow the recordings of our process as we go through there. So I would imagine making this video available to somebody who said, I'm thinking about writing a book, but I'm not sure how it fits inside my larger business plan. And now they've heard two different versions of how that might actually be done. And then that could help them, and then ask really good questions of me or you, or come to that Friday night session from 5 to 6 Central to work on that. Now, I think what I did with, I think I did with you, the example of design thinking, that's sort of the business planning approach of how to start looking for resources and partners and purpose and end-to-end production of value, which we did a couple weeks ago. I see that as the systems thinking, design
Yeah, that
thinking.
one's because that one, yeah, you were explaining a lot more the system.
Yeah.
And
I
then
actually,
today you broke your book down into all
Yeah.
its parts, and then we talked about mine a little bit,
Yeah.
where it fit into that. But yeah, you did the whole breakdown, and then like you said, and then you went backwards into where it would be lead magnets and even
Right.
in the tips reels and all that. So there's
Yeah.
always, but like you said, you have to start with the end in mind. And I think that's where a lot of people don't, when they're writing books, they don't get the whole idea is, are you writing books just to write books, or is it going to lead to your course, or is it going to lead to a consulting job or a
Right.
service that you're going to provide for people? You got to know where it's going to go. And then you work backwards, like you said.
Yeah. Yeah. So what we did this week for me and did with you last week was really, we were mapping out the value chain. I'm here and I want to produce these steps along the path that leads to my goal of providing service at a fair value, and how I'm going to do that. And then the book becomes a piece of leverage. You can say, if I structure the book well, then it can help me here and here and here and here and here. And then when I look at all the things I need the book to do to help me in my manufacturing process, that helps me design the book in a purposeful way. And that's why I ended up doing book 1 as the foundations book, and then the other books 2 through 10, each to support a particular vision of what I wanted to do, because we were not just going in a straight line. That original book in theory is actually going to give us an expanding range of opportunities to do things. But that book actually goes back and can help me gain clients from the funnel and get those people into the different services we offer. So that's why the examining the purpose and the goal of the book helps you then decide what it needs to contain, and then you can outline it in chunks, and then you can write the chunks very easily. And because you have it in chunks, that can be a breakout to do, again, lead magnet, attention getter, worked example, could be the basis for a lesson that leads into a course. So that book is now a multifunctional tool that gives you a ton of leverage. And you have the advantage of having that big book, because that thing acts as a hard to replicate, hard to duplicate expertise in the world. It is recognized expertise in the world. It just establishes credibility, seriousness, professionalism that just stands. Well, here is my book. Bam, check it out. And then other people that are offering half-ass coaching from an AI. Imagine some kid said, hey, I'm going to sell you this book on how to be a competitive gymnast. And I went to AI ChatGPT and I wrote that book in 1 hour. Isn't that awesome? And I would say, is that really a book that I want to read? Am I going to have my kid I'm gonna put my kids' life and the development of them in the hands of somebody who listened to AI for an hour and is now going to be the expert for my kid? I think
Right.
not. And so that book has a particular purpose. And now I want you to just think of that as your library or your shelf. Book 1 does this, book 2 does that, book 3, 4, 5, or whatever. Each one of those now is part of, the reading list for your curriculum support. And that helps. I find that actually loosens up that log jam of, oh man, I got this giant book in my head. It turns out you probably have 5 books in your head, and we need to just break it down into smaller chunks. So anyway, that's what I wanted to offer to you.
Yeah, that like I said, my big book is all
Yeah.
on gymnastic psychology. That's what it's called.
Yeah.
But it's mainly written for coaches. Some stuff in there for parents and for the kids, but it's way over their heads. It's really was written for coaches.
Yeah.
I just found that I don't like working with the coaches. They've got a lot of big egos.
Yeah.
They don't understand. They haven't been trained in the field. They think the kids are just mental. So if they're mental, they're either off the team or, oh, good, Denise is back, or they're just, they'll farm the kids out, but they don't want to bring it into the gym to help with the training. So it's really, it's a tough thing. And I coached for 25 years, so I know. So I just want to work with the kids, get back to working with the kids. I got to get the parents on board, because the parents are like the least educated in this field at all. They're not really aware. They're in one of those awareness phases, and it's down near the bottom, which is not good.
Yeah.
So I have to educate them. That's where I'm thinking the tips are going to help in that education process.
Yeah. You know what else that's going to produce? I want you to think about a cartoon book for kids that personalizes the tip in a nicely illustrate. Hire somebody on Fiverr to give you a nice little consistent graphical style that shows kids at play doing gymnastics, applying the tip in a nice, easy book that gives the kid such positive feelings to shape their world. This approach to the structured chunking was what I did with Angus Fletcher for the Army, which is what really led to the successful momentum that we've been developing. He had a 400-page book on the science of storytelling. It was sort of his magnum opus. And it's a beautiful best-selling book that nobody will read in the Army. I said, what I need is this field guide to creativity. It's about 100 pages max in a 5x8 format that would fit in my uniform cargo pocket, and that has 30 chapters with a short story, reflection questions, and for follow-up, read this. And then that gives me a concise 30-minute lesson that I could teach as needed. And I can, that little chunking, that compartmentalization is what we use to build out lessons for these guys at these schools that are not they're sergeants and lieutenants and captains. They can get their arms around one of those little lessons. I can teach them how to teach that one little lesson in a nice chunk. So the design of that book was had a very different purpose and structure. And it was what led to the actionable courses that we built, because I built a trading course on top of the Army's battle drill book by adding one trading lesson for each of those 30 creativity lessons. So I now have 2 chunks, and now you bounce the military lesson and the trading lesson against each other, and that leads to very powerful creative inspiration opportunities. And
so
that's become amazing.
Did she just leave again, Denise?
Yeah, she was having trouble with her connections.
Oh.
So I'm thinking, it's the internet connection on her end. And I have us at about 6:40 Central, so I feel sort of like you've heard.
I
quite
just wonder if
enough
she
of
had
me.
questions, because I know she said
Yeah.
she had been working on some of her artifacts.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I'm gonna hang on here. I'm gonna put the recording on pause. And I'm just gonna do some work in case she comes back.
okay. Yeah, and I was going to tell you, I signed up for a little, mini course on doing children's books.
Oh, very
And
good.
because no, I've thought about that.
Yeah,
One person is doing something just a little bit on, some mindset stuff that I
yeah,
do in kids' books. And I'm like, and I read them. I mean, I've been reading them. I'm like, they're like so wrong. I mean, I don't think they
oh,
know
yeah,
much about gymnastics and things. And I'm like, that's not
yeah,
real. That's not, what are you talking about? Like, I mean,
yeah,
it's like, I'm like, where'd you come from? And these seem like more like high schoolish issues, but
yeah,
they've got these little characters that look like, they're in fifth grade. So
yeah,
I'm kind of like, some of that stuff doesn't. I'm just like, look, I am not a creative person at all, but like I said, I can hire the creative people,
yeah.
to
Good to
do
know.
like you said, the artwork and all that stuff. If I can do the story. So what I bought was basically how to write stories, a storyline for
Yeah,
kids' books.
yeah,
And like I said, and I want to do that because it's like each, a chapter on one mental game skill,
yeah,
very simple, break it down. It could be like your respect thing,
yeah,
and
yep,
that's one little book just on, that part of respect.
yeah. How I get ready, what I say in the car, what I say walking into the gym, what I say or what I'm thinking about when I'm putting on my gear, you know, how I what I say while I'm waiting for my turn and what I say just before I go or what I do, that whole visualization all the way
Yeah.
from end to end. Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, there's
yeah,
so much. So it's like, I would love to do that because people in gymnastics, those books are expensive. I mean, that's why my book's $50.
right.
Because a lot of fields won't take a book that much. But with the scientific books, more like mine, there were two others who were more expensive than mine, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
So the publisher was like, we can't charge $50. I go, oh yeah, you are. I'm not
yeah,
buckling on that.
right.
I can always come out with some cheaper books, but I can easily sell. Most of these are selling for $14.95. These kids books, they're
Yeah,
not two
that's the thing. Yeah,
dollars like in these
right.
other fields. But to me, I'm
The
like, well, I'll make more money if I charge $9.95 because of the way Amazon does it. So I may as
right.
well do the $9.95, be cheaper than them, hopefully get that market. But no, I mean,
Yeah,
I've got things
that's
I'm
where
working on.
at some point you just say, look, if I've got the digital ebook for download and I can start using some of my books on Amazon to get the wide range, and in that book have links to your web page, and on your web page have books that you can only get from your web page.
Right,
And now you could sell it for $9.97 there and keep 100% of it instead of keeping 30% of it.
right.
And $7 times 1,000 books makes,
Yeah, that'd be nice.
yeah,
Yeah.
make is a significant difference. So for sure. Well, I
Okay.
think I'm going to turn off the recording and go on radio listening silence here because I got to get ready for my 8:30 mission here.
Oh yeah, you probably need a
And
break. Well, this was great. Thank you
yeah,
again.
well, my break is going back to work. This was a break for me. I find this energizing and refreshing.
Okay.
The now I've raised my energy level. Now I can grind through this horrible, awful professional trading because that is just misery. I mean, it really is.
And that's the stuff you got to get yourself out of.
Yeah, it's part of it is the in the warrior class, the scars you have, yeah, they hurt when you got them, and every so often it hurts, but it also is sort of a reminder of, yeah, okay, I've earned these, and it allows me to power through to the next one. So it's certainly not. Some guys, the joy of trading, it's really not. Uh, it's hard to make it joyful. It's because it's such a struggle to do it, to be honest. So let me go ahead and
All
hit
the
I'm
market
gonna hit
indices this afternoon,
Oh.
I was watching the news a little bit going,
Yeah.
oh,
They're getting
everything